A haunting legacy. The terrifying tale of the Amityville Horror, where time stood still and malevolence prevailed. Clock on the wall read 2:33 a.m. in the DeFeo house on Ocean Avenue in Amityville. The room was shrouded in darkness, save for the faint glow of the moonlight seeping through the curtains. Ronald DeFeo, sir, lay sound asleep in his bed, blissfully unaware of the impending terror that would soon envelop his family. Down the hall, his wife, Louise, stirred in her sleep. She had been having restless nights ever since they moved into this old Dutch Colonial home. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As she opened her eyes, she glanced at the antique clock on her nightstand. The red digits displayed 3:15 a.m. In the room next door, the DeFeo children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, John, and Butch, were also in the throes of a disturbing dream. They dreamt of menacing voices, ghostly apparitions, and a pervasive sense of dread that clung to their every thought. The events that had unfolded earlier that evening should have been enough to make anyone uneasy. A bitter chill swept through the house as they sat down for dinner. The windows rattled and the wind howled, creating an eerie symphony of dread. But it was the strange noises and whispers that had become a nightly occurrence that truly sent shivers down their spines. Louise had tried to dismiss these unsettling occurrences as mere quirks of an old house, but tonight was different. The atmosphere was suffocating, and she couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease any longer. She rose from her bed, throwing her robe over her shoulders, and tiptoed down the dimly lit hallway. In the kitchen, she found herself drawn to the cold cellar door. It was as if an invisible force compelled her to descend into the bowels of the house. She reached for the doorknob, her hand trembling as she turned it slowly. The rusty hinges creaked, and a musty odor engulfed her senses as she descended the narrow wooden stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, Louise found herself in a dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with old wine barrels, their contents long gone. In the center of the room, a single flickering candle cast eerie shadows on the stone floor. Louise's breath caught in her throat as she heard a faint, otherworldly whisper that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. "Get out," it hissed, sending a shiver down her spine. "Leave this place." Louise stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. She rushed up the stairs, slamming the cellar door shut behind her. Her husband stirred in their bed, disturbed by the commotion. "Louise, what's wrong?" he mumbled. She tried to find the words to explain, but her voice failed her. Instead, she pulled the covers tighter around herself and tried to convince herself that it had all been a terrible dream. But the nightmare was far from over. In the children's room, Butch DeFeo awoke with a start. He sat up in his bed, drenched in cold sweat, his heart racing. He couldn't remember the details of his dream, but the feeling of impending doom hung heavy in the air. He glanced at the clock on his nightstand, and his blood ran cold. The red digits displayed 3:15 a.m. Butch had always been sensitive to the supernatural, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent lurked in the shadows of their home. He knew he had to investigate. Quietly, he slipped out of his bed and made his way down the darkened hallway. The whispers grew louder as he approached the cellar door, and he felt a cold breeze emanating from the cracks around its edges. With trembling hands, he turned the knob and descended into the cellar. The flickering candle still illuminated the chamber, but this time it cast long, sinister shadows that seemed to dance and writhe on the walls. Butch's heart pounded in his chest as he felt an unseen presence in the room with him. He could hear the whispers, like a chorus of malevolent voices echoing in his mind. "Leave this place," they hissed, more insistent this time. "Get out while you still can." Butch stumbled back up the stairs, terror gripping his soul. He knew he had to warn his family, but he also knew that they wouldn't believe him. He returned to his room, praying that the morning would bring relief from the nightmare that had taken hold of their home. As the hours passed, the oppressive atmosphere in the DeFeo house only intensified. The whispers grew louder and more sinister, filling the air with a sense of dread that was almost palpable. It was as if the very walls of the house were alive with malevolence. At 3:15 a.m., the entire household was awakened by a deafening roar that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth. The ground shook violently, and the walls of the house trembled. Pictures fell from the walls, and furniture toppled over. The DeFeo family huddled together in terror, their screams drowned out by the cacophony of the supernatural. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the earthquake-like tremors ceased. The house fell eerily silent, the only sound the labored breathing of the terrified family. Butch looked at the clock, and his heart sank. The red digits still displayed 3:15 a.m. It was as if time itself had frozen in that moment of terror. Desperation overcame him, and he knew that they had to leave this accursed house. He woke his parents and siblings, urging them to pack their belongings and flee. But they were paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend the horror that had descended upon them. As the hours passed, the malevolent presence in the house grew stronger, feeding off their fear and despair. Shadows danced on the walls, and whispers echoed in their ears. The very air seemed to thicken with malevolence. By morning, it was too late. The DeFeo family had been consumed by the terror that had taken root in their home. The once happy family had become a nightmare, trapped in a house of horrors from which there was no escape. And so, the Amityville Horror continued to haunt the DeFeo house on Ocean Avenue, a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk in the most unsuspecting of places. The clock on the wall continued to tick, but time had lost all meaning in that accursed house, where the living and the dead were forever bound by the horrors of that fateful night. As the years passed, the story of the Amityville Horror became a legend, a cautionary tale of a family that had dared to enter a house of unspeakable evil, and the house itself stood as a silent sentinel, its dark history hidden behind its stately facade, waiting for the next unsuspecting family to fall victim to its malevolent grip. And so, on this dark October night, as the clock in the DeFeo house read 3:15 a.m., the Amityville Horror continued to reign, a testament. In the chilling shadows of the Amityville Horror, we unearth a profound lesson. The darkest corners of existence may hold secrets beyond our comprehension, and courage lies not in confronting them, but in recognizing when to walk away. For in the relentless pursuit of the unknown, we risk losing the very essence of our being. It is in our choices, not our confrontations, that we find the true measure of strength. The Amityville Horror reminds us that sometimes the bravest act is simply to turn and leave, for in doing so, we preserve the light within us and escape the clutches of malevolence, ensuring that our souls remain untarnished by the horrors of the abyss. Thank you for joining us for this spine-tingling story. We hope you found it both thrilling and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this video, please consider participating in our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing it with your friends. Your support goes a long way in helping us create more engaging content for you. Goodbye, and may you always tread carefully in the world of the unknown.